The true story of the Battle of Gettysburg. It was July 1863, and the fate of the United States hung by a thread. In a sleepy Pennsylvania town, two massive armies were about to collide in a clash that would decide the future of the nation. This wasn't just another battle. It was the turning point of the Civil War. Men would fight, bleed, and die, not just for victory, but for the very soul of America. This is the true story of the Battle of Gettysburg. Imagine a time when the Confederate Army, led by the brilliant General Robert E. Lee, was riding high on victory. Morale was soaring, and Lee saw an opportunity, a daring invasion of the North that could end the war in the South's favor. If he could crush Union forces on their own soil, maybe Britain or France would recognize the Confederacy. Maybe Washington would be forced to negotiate peace. It was a gamble, and Lee was all in. By early July, Lee's army had pushed deep into Pennsylvania. Meanwhile, Union General George Meade had just taken command of the Army of the Potomac. His forces were battered, exhausted, but determined. Neither side planned to fight at Gettysburg. It just happened. A chance encounter on July 1st turned into one of the bloodiest battles in American history. What started as a skirmish exploded into a three-day showdown involving more than 160,000 soldiers. Day one ended with Confederate forces pushing Union troops back through the streets of Gettysburg. The Union retreated to the high ground south of town, Cemetery Hill, Culp's Hill, and a long ridge that curved like a fishhook. But this was no ordinary hill. It would become the anchor of their defense and the stage for unimaginable heroism. On July 2nd, Lee launched a massive assault on both Union flanks. At a place called Little Round Top, the Union left nearly crumbled. But then came one of the most legendary stands in U.S. history. Colonel Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain and the 20th Maine held the line against wave after wave of Confederate attacks. When they ran out of ammunition, they fixed bayonets and charged downhill. Against all odds, they held the flank and saved the Union Army from disaster. But Lee wasn't done. July 3rd was the climax, the day of Pickett's Charge. With unwavering confidence, Lee ordered over 12,000 men to march straight into the heart of the Union line, across an open field nearly a mile wide. As they advanced, Union artillery rained hell. The ground shook, the sky filled with smoke, and entire lines of men vanished in an instant. The Confederates charged into death itself. When the smoke cleared, over half of them were dead or wounded. The attack had failed. Gettysburg was lost. The aftermath was staggering. More than 50,000 casualties in just 3 days. Lee retreated, and the Confederacy would never again pose a serious threat on Northern soil. The tide of war had turned. Gettysburg wasn't just a military victory. It was a defining moment. It showed the North could and would fight on. Months later, President Abraham Lincoln stood on that very battlefield. His Gettysburg address, just a few hundred words long, echoed across the ages. He reminded the country that this war was about more than territory. It was about the survival of democracy, of freedom, of a government of the people, by the people, for the people. Gettysburg wasn't just a battle. It was the crucible where courage was forged, where legends were born, and where the Union earned a second chance at life. It is a reminder that history turns not on peace, but on fire and fury, and that the price of a nation's survival is paid in blood and glory. If you found this story gripping, there's more where that came from. Hit that like button, subscribe, and join us as we uncover the real stories behind America's most pivotal moments. Raw, unfiltered, and unforgettable.